I'm so glad that you're back online. These last 2 or 3 weeks that you've been offline, and it's funny. I've been looking forward to this,
Oh, nice. Yes.
and not just to have, even if it was other people that you'd be speaking to, because I think it feels to me like there's some sort of evolution going on in the topics that you cover. So it's quite exciting.
Oh, nice.
Um, so the questions that have been coming up persistently in the last couple of weeks have had to do with some things you said about experience, and you said, and I don't want to misquote you, so please feel free to correct, that basically that nobody's experiencing anything. Is that a fair statement?
Yeah.
And also, though, you said that reality creates all of this in order to experience.
Yeah.
So is it failing at what it's trying to do in some sense?
No, not at all. It's having a really dynamic experience. But it's not reality. The creator of it all is non-existence. I remember this happening last time when I was speaking to you. I have to turn my volume off while I speak to you because it repeats.
Maybe I should keep my speaker further away.
Oh yeah, if you turn your speaker off, that works. If you just unplug it, or if you put headphones on.
Oh, I wish I had headphones. But
If not, I can just turn the volume off while I speak, and then I'll turn it back on once I've finished. Just so I don't have to hear.
Yeah, so I'll
Okay.
mute myself.
It's okay, I can mute you. So I've muted you now, so I can't hear you. So basically, it's not reality that's experienced itself. The source of everything is non-existence. So non-existence is creating existence. So it has to create existence in order to experience itself. And when I say non-existence, I mean something that doesn't exist in what is. It cannot exist as a form, as a thing. Yes.
So that's something that also I remember that you saying, and you said that earlier to the previous caller, and so in this non-existence, there still seems to be this urge to create existence. I mean,
No, it's not that it's an urge. It creates urges. It can't possibly have an urge. The nature of everything is not a thing, but there seems to be this explosion of energy that it creates, but it's not got any possible reason for it that appears in this world, because everything that we think of, or everything that we can possibly think of or experience, is already in existence and can't possibly look backwards on itself. It can't possibly step out of existence and look at itself. So we can't describe in any way why non-existence explodes into existence. But in a way, that's all that ever can be is existence, because in another way, there can never be non-existence. That can never exist, non-existence. There can only ever be existence. So the source of everything is not something that exists, is not a thing, and it's everything. And it can never be not a thing. It can never not exist. Non-existence doesn't exist. Isn't that crazy? But it's a spectacular.
So I don't mean to harp on this point, but it's something that I find give me a fair bit of trouble to really, and it probably will always, because it's such a mystery, and it's probably the eternal mystery. So is it fair to say then that is it really fair to say that non-existence is the source, or that existence itself is just, it just exists?
Well,
Why does it be a source?
This part's really important because the two halves go together perfectly and they're one and the same thing. I just have to turn the volume off. It's totally non-describable, but they have to come together. Existence has to be made of non-existence, and then non-existence always has to be in existence. Like it always has to be creating. And the more and more this comes back to life again, or this is seen, it's so obvious that the two dynamics are at play, that this is happening and not happening. And it's when it's really clearly seen that it's also not happening, then there's total freedom, but it's not seen by someone. And this, I love this saying, and I keep saying it lately, and I'm sure it seems very superficial, but it's so beautiful that when the bird flies through the sky, it leaves not a trace. When the source of everything reveals itself, the non-existence, this is happening, and it's never happened. It's gone. There's nothing that holds on to it. Non-existence. In the flow of things, there seems to be one thing to another to another. So if I break my arm, then in the next moment there's got to be healing the arm, and there's pain from the arm. But in the actual instant, which all there ever is this, it's not happening. So anything that appears isn't appearing as well. So say if you took like a really nasty situation, like a lion killing a zebra. To a human, the way the human looks at it is that's really terrible for the zebra. Like that must be really painful. We've got to get it out of his pain as quick as possible. But the zebra hasn't identified with anything. So the zebra's not dying, and the pain is gone as quickly as it's appeared. Like there's nothing that's attached to anything, so nothing is dying in that in that moment. The human looks at it and thinks the zebra's dying, and something in time is dying, but the zebra's not identified with anything, so all there is it happening and not happening. And that pain isn't happening for someone, so it's gone. It never happens. So the zebra doesn't die, only humans die because we've got a concept that we're alive. When it's really seen, our nature is really seen to be what it is, it's happening and not happening simultaneously. And that's why when the bird flies through the sky, it leaves not a trace, because nothing's leaving a trace in this. It seems to in cause and effect, but cause and effect are never really happening. It's only ever this. Cause and effect is only an appearance, it's not an actuality. The actuality is always this, and this isn't simultaneously. But it's not really something that I can intellectually persuade anyone of.
I'm glad that you touched on cause and effect, because that was the other question. And I've understood I've made the analogy myself many times, similar to the one that you make about movies, and the one that I use often is a computer game.
Yeah.
Where somebody trying to control an object on the screen with their controller.
Yeah.
And really, that's not what they're doing at all. It's a big setup. Someone who's written the program the program is reading the controller and then deciding which dots to light up on the screen. And it all looks to the player like it's like they're controlling the object, and it's just a total setup.
Yeah.
Now, it's interesting in real life, the one difference I noticed with that analogy to real life is that not only is the entire thing set up, but even the so-called player's actions are part of the same setup.
Mm-hmm.
So it's not even as if I'm controlling something and something else is happening, just not through apparent cause and effect, not real cause and effect. So not only is it not that way, but also the so-called things that I'm doing are also not being done by me.
Yeah.
So nothing's being done by me, and yet this apparent cause and effect occurs, and I feel that part of it was caused by me, and part of it was a result of that cause.
Yeah.
Now, so the question I have about that, just a little deeper, is that existence itself, the coming into existence of everything is complete mystery. So and what I call magic, it really is magic. And so if it is magic, and if reality has everything at its disposal, why is it not able? So first off, this in apparent cause and effect, it seems to me that this is an apparent existence apparent cause and effect in this apparent existence is good enough. By that, what I mean by that is that it's as real, it's as close to cause and effect. It's so close to real cause and effect that it's kind of almost like splitting hairs at a certain point. In other words, I guess except for people that are awake, for everybody else, it is real cause and effect, I guess, until it's not.
Yeah.
Is that a fair way
Yeah,
to
but it always appears in cause and effect. Like it's still in the Lisa character. The Lisa character lives in apparent cause and effect. I just have to turn the volume off. She lives in apparent cause and effect. So in that the character's world, everything is because of something else. So everything is a result of something else happening. So I came here from shopping this afternoon, and I put the shopping away, and I had my dinner, and so it's always cause effect in the character world, and that's what's so elusive to the separate individual, is seeing that line. My dog can't really see that line. She can smell it. In a sense, she can smell time, so she can smell the distance away of bodies, and she can comprehend some form of time, but she doesn't have that appearance happening, that thought process happening like the human does. And that is the illusion, because that is where the person exists. When you think of yourself, you describe yourself as a cause and effect. I mean, not quite as a cause and effect, but you describe yourself as something moving through time, and if there was no time, there wouldn't be a you. And this is the most obvious thing, but the most confusing thing to the person is actually it's never cause and effect. It's always this. Cause and effect is only happening as a thought process, really. Even if you said, okay, but you can drop that to that, right now that's a thought process again. That having been up here to here is a thought process. The actual reality of everything is this instant, which is appearing from nowhere, from nothing, and is spontaneously free. That's the reality always. Cause and effect is always in imagination. To my dog, there is no cause and effect because she hasn't got the ability to imagine that. But for the human, the imagination has become the most important thing, because that's where you are. So imagination, you and imagination has taken over. There's nothing wrong with imagination and the appearance of cause and effect. It's that you believe that's who you are. It's something moving through time. But as the character, though, even when that collapse falls of claiming things, the character still has to live in cause and effect. So if I crash my car, I still have to pay for the other car or my car, or I still have to take the consequences of that in. So they'll be going to the garage. But the reality always is this instant, and this instant is appearing from nowhere. In the imagination, in the human imagination, it appears from somewhere. My dog, it appears from nowhere because she doesn't have that ability to think like that. She has some smell which recognizes time, but she doesn't have a sense of an imagined time. So there, it's always appearing as this. It's always that mystery appearing. And that's always the case, even when it's being looked through the human body-mind mechanism. It's always appearing from nowhere. It's instantaneously this. Hey.
Just a little question about animals and their level of consciousness, since you're very empathetic to them. And
just the dogs. The other ones I'm not so sure about.
So, so there are times in which I often wonder about what, cows and dogs and cats and so on, what level of, is it really the case that they have no awareness of suffering in the sense that we do? I mean, it's just happening and they're not really suffering as an individual ego. It seems reasonable to me that perhaps that is going on there.
It seems like an impossibility. I really only know dogs very well. I've had dogs all my life, and it seems like an impossibility because they don't have complicated thinking. And that's my equation. And also her behavior, my particular dog now, although it's the same with all my dogs, but just because I can remember her the best, the way she behaves, it can't be coming from something that believes it exists separately. Sorry, say that again.
There's this beautiful video of this on YouTube about a dog and an elephant somewhere in Thailand.
Yeah.
Who became best friends, and the dog was carried away from the park for some time because it got sick, and the elephant followed it to the outskirts of the park to the hospital and wouldn't eat for about a month.
Yeah.
You know, so it clearly showed that at least, I mean, it remembered this dog.
But that doesn't necessarily imply an intelligent brain. I'm just turning your volume off again. It doesn't imply necessarily the morning side of things as an intelligent. When I say intelligent, my dog is very intelligent in different ways to a human. I mean something that can think. So mourning doesn't imply having to be able to think. We think it does because we see through our process. When two animals come together, so say me and my dog, there is a bond that happens, and I'm pretty sure it's in the brain. And if I were to remove myself from this situation, so if I were to leave her, even if I went to the park and I tied her up and left her and somebody let her off the lead, there's a chance that she would try and smell me out, but more than likely she would just sit and wait for me. And wait and wait and wait and wait. And that could go on for years, that she would wait. As a human, we would interpret that as she's missing me and she's waiting for me. But really it's a biological programming that happens in animals. It's not her thought process. She's not thinking, I've got to wait for her. That's what the dogs do in the wild when they're left by the older, by their parents to go out. The parents go out and hunt. They just sit and wait. So it's the reason that I think that the dog doesn't have sense of self is firstly because of the way she behaves, and secondly because I can't see how she could possibly think. And if the thinking's never evolved in the brain, she has some limited form of thinking, but not like we do. She hasn't got language, and I'm talking about language thinking. If she doesn't have language, she can't go, there can't be the appearance of I am and I am something. It really requires language. And also her behavior. Like, it's not that she's a perfectly nice behaving dog, but her behavior doesn't go into time, really. It's really instantaneous.
I know you've been to India many times, so
yeah.
By the way, I wanted to ask, are there any plans to make another trip to India in the future?
There was a plan to go at Christmas time, but it's still not set until I book the tickets. I'm not sure.
Okay. So the question with India was about, you probably observed the cows here.
Yeah.
So Ramana Maharshi is supposed to have had this one cow that he was very faithful, and he recognized as being a highly advanced soul. And this legend is that he sort of, toward the end of its life, he was able to liberate her.
Yeah.
So are cows of the nature that require liberation?
No, that's going to make me very unpopular to be going against Ramana Maharshi. Lisa versus Ramana Maharshi. I don't understand what's being talked about there, because, just so I have to turn the volume off, it just seems impossible, because it just doesn't seem possible that the animal's divided. The only difference between there's not an awake human, but awakening happening in the human body mind mechanism and the dog, is because it left home, it can recognize going home. And the dog can't recognize existence, whereas the human can, because it left home. But when the body dies, that will go. There can be a form of recognition because of leaving and going back, and the dog can't know that. It just simply is it. So that's the big fundamental difference. Like my dog just is free, but there's no sense there that she's free because she never knew a cage.
And so trees as well are supposed to have, I mean, Arida once remarked that even that trees fundamentally have a structure that's no different from a human being in the sense that they are actually doing sadhana.
What's
you would
sadhana?
say spiritual practice. And they are actually in contemplation. And so I gather from what you've said that you probably don't agree with the point of view that...
Well, it depends on how he's arguing that. Like the back of that story. Like he could be saying that spiritual sadhana is existence, is beingness, it's being. I don't know if that's...
But he would even say that the walls are contemplating, the trees are contemplating.
But he might be using the word contemplating as being. I don't know how he's talking about it.
Okay, I probably won't try and quote, speculate on what, but the feeling that I got from what he was saying was that everything is alive for one. That's why, the walls, the stones, everything is alive and conscious, and everything is suffering until liberated. This was the feeling that I got, and so the feeling I get from you is that humans are of that nature, but there's probably a divide somewhere in the animal kingdom.
But you never know how he speaks, because when there stops being the divide of self, the whole world wakes up. Because everything... Sorry?
Could you repeat that?
When there stops being the illusion of self, the whole world wakes up. It's everything that wakes up. So you don't know how he's referring to his language, because it's not that everything's suffering, it's only in the body-mind mechanism that appears the illusion of self. And when that goes, everything wakes up, because it's not the person that wakes up, which is such a bizarre concept. I don't know how better to put into words, but everything is made of existence. Everything is made of the same thing, so it's existence that wakes up, and there's only one existence appearing through many. Doesn't really make very good intellectual argument. You could find holes all over that.
About these sessions that you've been doing for the last couple of years, or maybe even more, I don't know how long, the feeling that I get is that it's the equivalent of a satsang, but with spoken word as well. That there's, and that's really...
It's what, sorry?
Satsang.
Yeah.
That's the, just the...
Meeting in truth.
The transmission of truth from one who is living that. And so is that something that you're sort of consciously aware of is happening in these...
I'm not consciously aware of it, it's simply happening. But when this is talked about, when non-duality, I also talk about other things. I talk about the programming of the human, and I talk about other concepts. But when non-duality is really talked about, so when it comes out of, it seems to come out of this mouth, this is the one that speaks it, but it doesn't need to be this mouth, it could be some other bodies as well. When it's spoken of, it's like existence recognizes itself again. And I notice it in my talks, particularly my live talks, because I can't see most of the people that are online, it's like I'll be sitting there, and then when I really talk about non-duality, so when I really go for the pointing, because I'm not always pointing, I'm sometimes talking about the conditioning, and I'm sometimes talking about concepts, and I'm chit-chatting. Not that it's any different ultimately, but when I really speak, when there's real speaking about the not to-ness, it's like I can see it in the bodies, but they don't know it's happening. and it's not through the bodies. It's like existence is waking up to itself again. And the one common thing that I'll see is as soon as I start really going for the non-duality bit, the bodies go like this, and it's not anything to do with the body, it's existence knowing itself again. It's like here it is, existence, and it's hiding in all these bodies as if it's something separate, and then it's like here, and then there's one body that's going, but you are this, and then you see them close down again. And it's not an experience they're happening, it's like you're pointing out what's so obvious and known, but it's just a pretense going on that you're something else than what you are. It's really beautiful. It's not particular to Lisa. I see it happening with other speakers as well. When they really speak about non-duality, like most speakers only speak about non-duality about 20% of the time in their talk. I, and a few others, not because it's any better, tend to just stick more to non-duality, but I even go off the subject too. I go to, it doesn't really matter, like I talk about conditioning, and I like talking about the dog and the programming, and then I'll talk a little bit about psychology sometime, and I'll explain it intellectually. But when the non-duality bit, it's like existence knows itself, but it's just playing a game of not. And then it's spoken about, and then it goes back again. And the person doesn't even know. And then the person comes back and tells me about all these experiences, and it's not that. It's not the experiences. You wouldn't even know existence waking up, because the person only knows things in time, and that's something that's happening outside of time. It's really beautiful, but it's happening without the person knowing. And then the person says, but I've gone into such contraction, or this has happened to me, or that has happened to me. And that's got nothing to do with it, really, because it's nothing to do with the person. The person's doing its own little creation. It's a whole light show in and of itself.
What you said about you can feel the individual respond when non-duality is spoken about. Reminded me of a couple of lines from a Leonard Cohen song, which is, there is a crack in everything, that's how the light gets in.
That's so sweet.
And so I do want to thank you for being this engine of truth that, is just spontaneously bringing this force, this awakening force to people that you come into contact with.
That's really beautiful, thanking me, but it makes me want to cry because I just turn the volume. It makes me want to cry because it's yourself that's doing it. It's everything that's doing it, and it's so beautiful because all of us are made of exactly the same thing, and existence is what controls everything. It's so sweet.
It is truly an incredibly beautiful process, and
it has to go through the hell in order to do that. It has to. It's the only way. It's the only way it could set it up. I know it's terrible when the hell's presenting itself, but it has to separate it. It has to have half darkness, half pain.
I heard I saw your interview with Buddha at the gas pump.
Yeah.
And I was really happy when you spoke about your awakening occurring in Bali.
Yeah.
I spent a couple of months there last year, particularly in Ubud, and that's just such an incredibly beautiful place. So it was just imagining how the events that might have occurred over there in your case.
Yeah.
So this has just been wonderful speaking to you. Lisa.
Yeah, and you. Thank you so much. Lovely to speak to you. Bye.
Bye.
Oh, that was sweet. I felt the sweetness, the thank you, because is everything speaking.